My people around the world, welcome back again. I love you so much for continuing to come and listen to this amazing podcast. Today, I have a very special guest, a man of many talents, a man of mystery, a man of numerous operations across the entire world, from comedy, dating, and other adventures. Welcome, Brian Howie.
Hi. Wow, that sounded pretty good. I was like, who's he bringing in?
Yeah, cool. I'm happy I was able to surprise you a little bit.
Man of mystery. I'm a simple man.
A simple man. So tell us a little bit about yourself then.
Oh, I don't know. I have been a writer, director, producer for a long, long time. Mostly dealing with subject matter that deals with the dynamic and the disconnect between men and women. I have that has manifested itself in off-Broadway shows and television productions and live events, and I have been trying to, through various forms of both fiction and nonfiction, dealing with that for probably 20-something years in one way or another. So I'm not sure if I've solved the puzzle, but I think I'm a lot closer than most.
So what do you think is the biggest disconnect or biggest issues in that problem that you're trying to solve?
Well, if we're talking about recent history, the last 20 years or so, I think the biggest problem is the blurring of traditional gender roles when it comes to dating.
Agreed.
Sociologically, we may have changed a lot, but physiologically, we're still wired a certain way, or at least the overwhelming majority of the people are still men and women, boys and girls. And when you take away the traditional roles and the traditional hunter-gatherer, for lack of a better term, it really confuses both what we do and how we do things. And, it has changed in the middle of sort of a couple generations of people where the women have ramped up their independent, I don't need a man, masculine energy. And in a lot of ways, the men have gotten softer, which has really led to a standstill between both, I don't want to use the word sides, but between men and women. We've taken a half step away from each other. And so just to get back to a certain place, we have to take a half step back towards. And then even then, we needed to take another step towards each other. And that's what I think is the biggest challenge over the last 20 years. There's been a lot of sort of micro challenges that flow from that. But everything really does stem from that, I think.
Yeah, I agree, actually. I think that making the genders a lot more fluid, changing up the roles of each of the genders, and essentially making it so anyone could do anyone's role has really confused a lot of people and has really blurred the lines.
It has. The rise of the independent woman has not coincided with a rise in happiness.
Agreed.
By or from the women. There has never been a bigger pool of unhappy women in this country, ever.
Not even just in this country.
Not in this country.
All over the world.
All over the world. And I've traveled all over the world dealing with this. And there's a backlash amongst women. There's a lot of girl-on-girl crime on this stuff, too. There's like, wait, is this what we wanted? Is this what we asked? We want the guys to not approach us and compliment us and ask us out anymore?
Yeah, there's like a conflict.
Is this
conflict
the world?
Of interest.
And so the women are absolutely not on the same page. And the men are like, okay, when you guys figure it out, let us know. We'll get off of our video games and come back to you. But that's sort of what's going on here is people are like, okay, we wanted this, and we're not sure that this actually translates into all aspects of life. And in a lot of ways, it's a wonderful thing. Workplace, equality, great, all of it. But at the end of the day, when you take that out of that environment, a lot of the women are like, I'm not sure this is better.
I had an aunt. She recently came from the country of Colombia. She's about 43 years old, and we were talking. Recently got divorced. Marriage of 7 years down the drain. And I would ask her, how do you feel about life? Because she was a top executive. She was a vice president in a company in Colombia. She was making really good money, making top 10% of the salaries in Colombia. Living great, eating at the best restaurants, never had to worry about a thing. She gets divorced, and we start talking and ask her, how do you feel about life? How do you see things now? She says, honestly, I was taught since I was a young girl that the only way to really succeed is just by hustling, by working, by focusing on myself. I don't need a man. I don't need anything except myself. And now she tells me that 20 years down the road, she's very unhappy. She hates her life. She doesn't know why she decided to take that path that was always told to her, that was, be your own woman and you don't need anybody.
Yeah. And the men don't feel needed. And in a lot of ways, we're probably not needed, but we have a desire to be needed.
Yes.
And to feel wanted, and to think that if I come into your world, it's somehow going to enhance it. So for generations fathers told their daughters that you need to grow up and marry a prince and somebody's going to take care of you.
Yep.
Somewhere along the line, about 20 years ago, the men, again, in a lot of ways rightfully so, told the women, you can't count on any of these guys, and you need to make your own money and do your own thing and be independent. And again, a lot of that is accurate. But what that did to a lot of women is just made them tune out the possibilities that they need anybody. And then they get to a certain point of life that they don't feel as fulfilled, and they are lonely, and they are a little lost, and they're like, this doesn't feel the way I thought it was, that people are like, well, you can go get it and have everything for yourself. And they're like, you know what, I don't know. I don't know about this. I don't know if I want to be a lawyer. There's a lot. I get so many whispers to me, and they'll be like, I would love to just be like a stay-at-home mom if the women wouldn't attack me for saying that.
But if you say that,
they're not allowed to say it out loud.
You get rejected.
Yeah.
You get
rejected. So the
for
pressure
that.
of the women to, and we have a woman in the room here, behave a certain way and act a certain way and say certain things, that it really comes, it's both internal and external, and she doesn't know. And so that has left the guys, a little bit lost to the point of being overly passive. So you're taking a whole lot of men who are already probably one beat too passive to be anything. They're not approaching women. They're certainly not complimenting women. We have taken workplace romance out of the equation, which was the source of about my parents met at workplace.
Contact the HR department.
Right. I know it now. It's like that's off the table. Going out after work, happy, all of that. And so it's made it much, much harder for men and women to connect on what used to feel like a natural progression.
I think that's caused the increase of the social media meetings, the Instagram, the Tinders, the Bumbles.
Yeah, everybody's hiding behind devices. It seems really unnatural to approach somebody face-to-face anymore. People all have their guards up, men and women. And, the last 2 years have really made people withdraw into their world.
Yeah, do you think the pandemic intensified that?
It did. A couple things that were good about the pandemic. I think that prior to the pandemic, I was encountering a lot of men and women who were like, you know what, it's too hard to date. Maybe I would just like to be alone. Maybe I would just like to sit home with my Netflix and my dog and be fine. I think that a big percentage of people missed the experience and missed the excitement of going on a date and the physical contact. And so those people, which is not everybody, have come back out more excited than ever and more looking for opportunities than ever because they really missed that sort of environment. Some people, though, we're never going to get them back.
No.
They just settled into their ways and gained 30 pounds, and we'll never see them again.
They've escaped.
They don't have to go back to the workplace. They will never take off the sweatpants.
And I think a lot of people are just scared to be in reality now. We've grown up in a generation now that it's all about technology. It's all about instantaneous satisfaction, instantaneous gratification. And if it's not instant, they don't want it. And they don't want to work for anything.
They don't. People want to hand to them. And there's also so much, if we're talking about dating, it's so fear-based now.
Yes.
We think she's a crazy bitch. He's a psycho asshole. He's going to chop me up and put me in the trunk of his car. I need to be able to get out of here in 15 minutes. I need my friend on speed dial. I need an exit plan. We didn't used to date that way. And it's not that we were better back then. We were psychos back in the 90s and 2000s too. But this sort of, oh my God, I saw this on Dateline, and oh my God, this Lifetime movie, this is how it worked out, that this is now translating into real life. It doesn't bring excitement to dating. It brings apprehension, and it brings, overt caution, and you're missing out on a lot of opportunities that would be there.
That's not just dating, though. That's also marriage. How many people say, I have to sign the prenup, before I get married in case we get divorced? They're already going into the marriage with the mindset that it's not going to last.
I agree with that. I'm going down with the ship. I'm not asking for a prenup.
Yeah, exactly. It's a one-time
deal. Easy for me to say. I don't have $1 billion. So, yeah, Elon Musk's first, he's sort of in the news these days. His first wife said that my board is asking me to sign things because there's like voting rights involved. So he shaped it. It's not a prenup, but legally, because there's some succession rights you have to sign. And she didn't know what she was signing. She's like, sure, I think we're going to get married and whatever. And it kind of screwed her when it all shook out. She didn't know what she was signing.
Speaking about Elon, what do you think about his recent actions in the media? What do you think about his whole move to buy Twitter, promote that free speech mentality? What do you think about that?
I trust him on that. I think he doesn't need the crap if he's really trying to do it. I think he really just wants free speech. I mean, he's a guy, he doesn't own a house anymore. He's homeless, essentially.
Yeah.
He lives in various, now I'm sure he Airbnbs some mansions, but he's very minimalist. He, if he wants a fun hobby, he's trying to go to Mars or whatever. I like that he's like, you know what? I think this is important. I'm going to throw a big check at it and see what can what can do. I don't think his intentions are sinister. I don't think he's doing anything. I do trust him on that. He's not American, so he doesn't think in a lot of strange ways the way American people do about things. I'm all for it. I think at the very least he will get rid of a lot of the bots on Twitter, which a lot of it is, and a lot of people have bought a lot of power artificially through that. I think he wants to clean that up. I think he wants to have more open and honest conversation. Where that goes, I don't know. I mean, everybody looks at and I'm a huge Twitter fan. I love Twitter. It's where I get most of my information from. But I want to hear all sides. And especially the last 2 years, we silenced a lot of health experts who probably had things to say. We silenced some political people. And I think Elon's like, you know what? And the biggest thing about it is Jack Dorsey. Twitter is his baby. He invented it. He wants Elon to do it. He lost control of his company. The company lost its way, and he's like, I'm all for this. So if it's good enough for Dorsey, who's an eccentric himself in a lot of ways, but he's just like, yeah, bring it back to the original intent of this platform, I'm cool with it.
Just like you were talking about earlier about going at things from a fear-based perspective, of being afraid going into things. I've seen a lot of people have a reaction that they're afraid of having too much speech, too much freedom.
They're really only afraid of one thing. Yeah. All of this reaction is about one thing. They're all afraid of Trump.
Exactly.
This is all about all the backlash on the Twitter. It's really about Trump. They're afraid that if Trump gets back on Twitter, the rise of Trump will happen. And people are couching in other things. No, we don't want hate speech. And they're full of shit. They really are afraid of Trump. Almost a big percentage of our population, every waking moment and their identity is built around Trump and their dislike of Trump or their love of Trump. Way too many people care a lot about Trump. My personal experience with Trump, he owes me $17,000, and he's owed it for about 15 years. I don't let that. So I'm like, he's a tough asshole to deal with. But I don't obsess over it. I don't care. It doesn't affect my voting. It doesn't affect anything. It's like people really spent 4 years so encompassed in Trump that they miss it. It's like phantom pains. Like they want it back.
It's like Stockholm Syndrome.
Yeah. And so all this Twitter fear about Musk, it's really that they might let back in Trump. That's all. That's what this is all about.
And I think a lot of people also confuse freedom for anarchy. They think a lot of people say, oh, too much freedom is an issue. There's a big distinction between having the liberty to disagree with people, liberty to say what you need to say. Yeah. Obviously, according to the law, don't call fire in a theater. There's limits to free speech as well. But at the same time...
But I think in that court case, I think you actually can cry fire in a theater. There's a lot of nuance in that ruling.
But not if it's false.
Or if you weren't sure. You'd be surprised at how many slices to that ruling there are.
There's layers to everything.
Yeah.
There's layers to absolutely everything.
I know. So even
setting that distinction, I think, is very needed.
And if you don't want to listen to people saying crazy shit, then don't listen to it.
Yeah, it's not a real place. Twitter's not a real place.
Twitter's not a real place.
It's a digital place.
People mistake. That is dangerous, though. A lot of people would rather live in the coming storm, the metaverse.
Like I said earlier, they wanna live in the digital world. They don't want to live in reality, and that translates also to the
Zuckerberg's playing all this. Like he's sitting quietly, but he's betting everything on people. If I can create a metaverse that is better than people's lives, they're going to put on a helmet. They're going to imagine that they're eating lobster. They're going to imagine that they're with some hot girl, and they're just not going to go out. That's what he's betting on. I think he's going to win.
Probably.
I think he's right that people will prefer that. Yes. They're like, I can have a risk-free good time in my house by doing nothing. Yeah, that's the coming storm.
Yeah, and he could thank Steven Spielberg for Ready Player One for giving him the idea, putting that vision into reality. I think you're right.
The technology is there where, I did this virtual reality ride at Disneyland a couple years ago, and it was like, you were like hang gliding over California. That was sort of what it was. And you're basically sitting in a chair with a helmet on. And I'm really afraid of heights. I could not convince my brain that this was not real.
Yes.
I couldn't wait to get off the ride, even though I was just sitting in a chair on the ground. I can imagine the technology of what the virtual stimulation is going to be able to do to trick your smell and your taste and your sense and do that's coming. And once that is perfected and once it's cost effective, nobody's going to leave their house.
Nobody. That's the end of dating.
That's the end of a lot of things. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, you can really convince that is definitely the end of dating, and that's coming storm. And that's, Zuckerberg sort of sitting in the wings. Like, yeah, that's what we're betting on. I think he's going to win. I think he's going to win that battle.
And I think people want him to win.
I think they do too.
I think they're tired of the human experience.
They are. People are tired, which is so sad.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I know. The kid who's 13 or 14 now, by the time he gets to high school, he doesn't know what he's missing because he's never been with a hot girl. So he's going to be like, this is better than anything I've ever had. No risk, no real cost. I'm in. Good.
It's a guarantee.
It's a guarantee.
No risk, no
this
reward.
Virtual version of Ariana Grande that he creates is going to call him by his name.
Yep. He's going to make him feel validated.
Make him feel everything. Why? He's not going to ask anybody out.
No.
He's not. He's going to be like, why would I ask some real person out when I get 70, 80% of the real experience right here?
Agreed. And it's sad. It's sad. It's sad that that's the future.
That's travel now too. It's like, oh, you don't have to spend all this money and go to a beach in Thailand. You can just put on a helmet and sort of experience it. And the more real it gets, nobody's going to go anywhere. Nobody's going to experience things. Nobody's going to do that.
I think that also contributes to the fact that it'll give you so many dopamine hits in your head.
I know.
Think it's so real.
You will, and you'll be able to. Get addicted to that.
Yes, you'll get. People are already addicted to it.
They are, so nobody's going to work.
Ask how many people nowadays would say, I'm going to get off of Instagram, any social media, I'm going to get off of it for 2 months. Not even going to touch it.
Yeah,
they can't do it.
They can't do it.
They can't do it. I'm missing out.
I know.
I'm getting that fear of missing out. I can't see what my people are doing.
I know.
They're checking their phone by instinct.
Right. People are going to think that I'm dead if I'm not on social media. I need to share every little thing. How are people going to know what I ate unless I took a picture of it and posted it? People think I'm not eating. I know. It's all scary stuff. I don't know what we do about it. I don't have an answer to that. I don't know how we stop that coming storm.
I think there's only one solution, and is that people make that decision for themselves. To try to force people to do it is going to be nearly impossible. But people need to start waking up a little bit and realizing what's coming.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried to do that, but
they get
there's
defensive.
Too many people who are unhappy. All of this is stemming out of I'm unhappy in the real world right now. I'm unhappy with my life. I don't like my job. I don't like my wife. Lots of people spend a lot of time focused on and thinking about what they're unhappy about.
Yes.
Very few people sit and make a
negativity.
checklist about they're obsessed over it. They're constantly thinking about it. Here's what I don't like. Here's what I don't want. They don't spend nearly as much time thinking about the things I do like. And so when you sort of envelop your whole existence in a negative platform, you're looking for an escape. And if this gives you an escape,
And what's ironic about that is if it was so bad, if that negativity was so bad, you wouldn't want to talk about it. You wouldn't want to feel it. You'd want to get away from it as much as you can. I think a lot of people are addicted to that negativity.
I believe
they're addicted to feeling that feeling because a couple reasons, but I'll just say it how it is. It gives them an excuse to not do anything with their life. I'm feeling like trash. I can't do anything.
Well, I believe the lockdowns lasted a lot longer because people didn't mind it because people weren't that happy with the way things were. They're like, oh, I'm not missing out on anything. We're all locked down. I can just watch TV and order food at my house. I think if people were truly more miserable, people would have freaked out. But a lot of people are like, I want this to go on forever.
You look at people. I think that the closer a country is to the pillar of survival, the more they want to end the lockdown. The more they want to be productive because it's about their survival at that point.
Yes.
You look at most third world countries, when that lockdown was occurring, they wanted to get out the house. There was conflict because they wanted to get out the house.
Lockdown couldn't happen 15 years ago because you couldn't order anything at home.
Exactly.
You didn't have things to entertain you. We would have had to go to work. We couldn't have had Zoom meetings to be productive.
No.
We would have.
Society would have ended.
So we would have just gone to school and we would have done it and we would have been fine. If you look back at the stats, like there was pandemics in 1957 and 1968, and we don't even talk about them because nobody changed anything. They just kind of dealt with it, and a lot of people got sick, and that was it. You hear about those things. We heard about 1918, because 1918 they actually tried to lock people down. 57 and 68, we didn't. Life went on. Oh, yeah, wow, a lot of people are sick.
This conversation reminds me of two different topics. It reminds me of the movie The Matrix. Morpheus was telling Neo, some people don't want to be unplugged from the system.
Right.
They will do anything that they can to defend the system, even though the system oppresses them in every way possible, but they don't care.
Yeah.
And the second thing it reminds me of is the book 1984 by George Orwell.
Yeah.
Where you could rewrite history as much as you want and you could brainwash people to think whatever you want them to think because you control the news. You control the media, which is why I like that Musk is being a pioneer in this and saying, no, we're not going to restrict what can be seen and what can't be seen. You know,
Yeah,
we're going to give the people the ability to choose what they want to see.
I agree, and that scares a lot of people.
Yes.
You know,
But why do you think that they're scared? They're probably scared because they've never had that freedom before. They've grown up in a generation where that's always been the case. It's always been restricted. It's always, you can't see this, you can't say that. If you try to act this way, you'll offend somebody. And if you offend someone, that's bad.
nobody freaked out when Jeff Bezos bought the Washington Post.
Exactly.
And he bought the Washington Post because he wanted that clout in Washington. He wanted to be right in there.
It's also because he was keeping the establishment that was already there.
Correct.
He wasn't changing anything.
Right. He was going to basically control the narrative the way they wanted to control.
Exactly.
He wasn't like, I'm going to buy it and we're going to print everything. No, wasn't like that. You know, so people are scared. People are angry. People are lost. People are a lot of things that are not good. The last 2 years riled up a lot of people. You can go back the last 5 years since the Trump election probably got people angry in a way that really threw our society off focus. And it's bad for the kids coming up. It's bad for people who have these obsessions, for people who don't want to work anymore. Like, there's just a lot of repercussions that are snowballing, and a handful of really smart people are picking up all the chips and taking all the money. And, I don't know how that's going to work for
What do you think the second and third order effects of kind of going more into that digital world, not having as much human interaction, how do you think that's going to affect sex, society, children's upbringing, stuff like that?
I mean, I think that the relationships are going to end. Even now, I think a whole generation, I don't know how old you guys are, that kids are being raised by iPads.
Yes.
The parents are not. They're just tossing the device to babysit, to entertain, to educate, all these kind of things. So you really, even parental and child engagement and interaction has never been at more of an all-time low. And, that's not good either. That is like, who am I listening to for my advice? The fact that any 8-year-old can pull up just about anything on YouTube.
They have a supercomputer.
Yeah, it's scary.
Look up anything that they want in the world.
You can. There's more power in this than in the rocket that went to the moon back in the day.
And you want to know something significant about that? That's already being observed in other countries. Japan, for example, is having a massive problem with their fertility rate. It's at an all-time low. Their elderly population is so old.
Right.
It's accounting for almost 45% of the total population. People that are 60 and older is accounting for almost 45% of their entire population because they're obsessed with the technology.
Yeah. Well, that'll kill some of the overpopulation problems in a lot of places. I read somewhere that in 20 years we're going to run out of food as a planet. I'm like, I don't think so. I think we're going to lose people. I don't think we're going to gain.
No, I always like those crazy statistic pages that say, you have about 5 years before the state of Florida is completely underwater.
Yeah, we're going to be underwater. The meteor is going to hit. All these. Fear sells a lot. Fear does.
Fear controls.
Right now, they're scaring us with climate change. They're scaring us with nuclear threat. They're scaring us with pandemic stuff. Fear really generates a lot of money for a lot of people. Yeah.
Money, control, and oppression.
Yeah,
100%.
I know.
If you think about the amount of people that were scared to take off the mask, even when mandates were over, people were terrified.
I got chewed out 2 days ago in an elevator. I was in the elevator. A guy, like on the third floor, the door opens. He's getting in, and he goes, "Why aren't you wearing a mask?" I'm like, first of all, I'm the one in the elevator. Don't get in my elevator if you don't like it. But I'm like, are you ever going to take the mask off, sir?
And here was the thing that was funny. Here was the thing that was very ironic about that. People always complaining about the mask. If you're wearing the mask, why do you give a shit if anyone else is wearing it? Because aren't you protected?
Yeah,
aren't you safe?
I agree. If you're,
That's like if I have a bulletproof
Kamala
vest.
Harris, as we record this, 2 days ago, the White House issues a statement to pressure doctors to start prescribing this new antiviral drug.
Oh,
then yesterday, Kamala says, I have COVID. Thank God I have no symptoms, and I've been boosted 4 times. But I'm taking this drug that's supposed to be given within 5 days of symptoms. You have no symptoms. The 4 shots were supposed to protect you in some way. Why are you talking about some drug that you don't need, other than you're trying to get people to, it's just another layer of money on this pandemic thing. I'm not saying, do whatever you got to do, but at some point she should be like, everybody go outside and take a walk. lose the weight. Stop eating bad food.
People who continue to wear the mask because they're afraid, it's like me wearing a bulletproof vest and no one else is wearing one, and then everyone's getting blasted.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, why aren't you wearing the bulletproof vest? That'll protect me also. What kind of logic is that? People that say, oh, I need to take the 5th booster or anything like that. That's like saying I'm about to jump out of a plane with a parachute. But, there's maybe about a 25% chance that it's going to save me.
Yeah.
Am I still going to jump out the plane?
Yeah. I don't know what people wanted to be told what to do. People wanted to believe what they wanted to believe. It's scary, and I don't know how we change that. Like, people can speak up as long as, as Musk said, if the platforms are equal and the voices are heard equally, I think that's one thing. But the people who control the media and the narrative, which is a handful of people and companies, it really is,
yes,
can dial things up or dial things back. I'm all in favor of Amazon. I think it's a good company. I think it made people's lives a lot easier. He got very rich with people locked down ordering stuff. And he simultaneously owns one of the biggest newspapers in the country, and CNN is owned by, a big conglomerate too. And everybody gained a lot of money in the power positions to keep people locked down and afraid.
I think the solution comes from having discussions. Like you said, if only one spectrum is having all the conversations, it's an echo chamber. The same ideas get bounced around. There's never a discussion. If people disagree, have that discussion. That's where compromise comes from. If there's no compromise, there'll never be a solution that satisfies everybody. Everyone will always be in conflict because there will never be a compromise dealt. And like we said earlier, people love the system. As much as it does them harm, they love the system.
They love it. They're hooked on it.
We have to teach people to not depend so much on the system.
Yeah, I know. You got to be an independent thinker. We've lost our ability to reason. We've lost our ability to use logic on a lot of decisions
because it offends people.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Like, even things that people would admit were silly, like go to the restaurant, take your mask off, walk to the table, eat, talk, put your mask back on to leave the restaurant. Like, everybody kind of agreed that that's absurd, yet we did it anyway. It's absurd that the only people legally masked right now are 2-year-olds in New York City. Like, what are we doing here? That logic and reason is thrown out the window because it's like, it's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. And people are like, too bad, stop complaining. It's not so bad. There's a lot of that too. It's not so bad. Everything's not so bad. You've really lowered your bar on what things could be if you're like, nah, it's not so bad. It's not so bad I had to stay in my house and wear a mask for 2 years. It's not so bad. What do you mean it's not so? It's not so bad that they want me to get a shot that I don't want to get or lose my job. Really? That's kind of bad, And I got the shot, and I did it because I got the booster. I got it all.
I was forced to take it. I was forced to take it in the Army.
I wanted to travel, and I do my live touring shows, and I had to do certain venues that required the vax. So I did it. I'm not the purest body that I won't put McDonald's in my body. So I'm like, I can take the shot. The point is that, like, people are like, just do it. Doesn't matter. Just do it.
Don't even think about it.
Don't even think about it. And if you don't do it, like, and I'm like, so I did it, but I'm like, I don't care if anybody else got the shot. What do I care what somebody else did? That drives me nuts.
That's teaching people blindless obedience.
Yes.
You want to know what other country had blindless obedience? Germany. When Hitler took over. Don't think about killing people. It's just the way it is.
And the Chinese did a very good job early on of circulating the zombie apocalypse out of Wuhan. They made it seem like the only way to deal with this virus is to completely lock down your society, which they wanted us to do.
And everyone else followed.
Start with the Chinese. They didn't fully lock down until like recently when we started to open up again. They're like, oh, better lock down again. And we followed along. They're like, oh my God. They showed videos of like bodies dropping dead in the streets. Like, that didn't really ever happen in reality, but they put that out there. That gets shared around the world. They put that on Facebook, and, they talk about how, foreign influences our elections. Well, they influenced our reaction to a lot of things. They made it seem like it's the absolute plague for everything. And they screwed, and they laugh the whole time, I'm sure, So,
like we said, control. They control how we are. Who do you think is providing all the supplies to send all the shippings, to build the toys?
Who made all the masks? Yeah, the Chinese.
Yeah, who produced all the medicine was sending it worldwide to other countries, not just the U.S., a lot of Arab countries, a lot of countries in Europe, the Indians, in India, We're a massive customer for the Chinese. So it's all one big game. And unless people decide to start looking at the game and how it's being played,
right,
they're just going to continue to be pawns in the game.
Yeah, I agree. And so, if you have a voice, use it. If you think differently, speak up.
Yes.
Like people,
that's why we're here.
Right. There are a lot of people who feel the same way. I would get that all the time because I have no problem speaking up all the time. And I would get like private messages and like, I wish I could say that. I mean, you can.
You can.
And I'm always like, you can say that. Why don't you say that?
Don't be afraid.
And I never understood that. I'm like, well, I don't, that's not really my thing. That's your thing. I'm like, why is it my thing? That's my thing to just be a provocateur. Like, why can't you say, especially, I'm not a parent, but if I was a parent and they were like making my kids effectively miss 2 years of school, I'd be really mad about that.
Or if they were, trying to teach my kids that I have to hate certain people or I have to like certain people just based on how they look.
Yeah. Yeah. I would hate all that too. And a lot of parents are like, well, you don't know the pressure from the PTA. And my neighbors. And I'm like, this is your health of your
What kind of
kids.
Spineless parents?
I know. I'm like, this is
spineless.
only like the future of your children. Like if you're ever going to speak, I'm like, why am I speaking up more about this? I don't even have the kids.
Why don't you care more about your children than, other people do?
Yeah, people are like, yeah, it's fine.
This is your own flesh and blood.
I don't want my neighbors to get mad at me and not invite me to the cookout. Like that was really the approach of it. And I'm like, I don't
plugged into the system.
I don't understand that. This is your children. And that's the way it was. I don't know.
Well, like you said, it's just the way it is.
Yeah, that's what they said. But I speak up, and I like opposing voices. I like people to challenge me.
I think we need to
have
those discussions.
I have these discussions. We
need to have those discussions.
Yeah, I host a political podcast, and it was hard to get people to participate in that for a couple because we were like, no, I don't want to talk.
I don't want to make anyone
about how
mad.
I feel. But I'm like, but you do feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. The voice is the one thing that we should be able to use, before they take it away, or when you do have the opportunity, you do have to speak up and do believe what you want to believe. And there's nothing wrong with that, or there shouldn't be, but people have been sort of social pariahs who express a certain opinion, and so only the super fringes really get heard. You hear from the radical left, and you hear from the far right, and then there's a big middle that doesn't say anything.
Yes.
So it seems
the middle is very quiet.
The far left and the far right are a lot closer together than you think.
Yes, they are.
And the middle is way too quiet, and the middle is the majority. So a handful of people on either side have hijacked the conversation. And this big chunk of people in the middle, which is probably 85% of the population, don't say anything, and they let the fringes hijack the conversation.
I think the extremists on both sides have a common goal, and that's to spread their ideology as much as they can.
Yeah.
And have people adopt that ideology. But the problem is that if you try to say something, you're automatically labeled as the extremist, which is stupid. It's ridiculous. We should be able to say, you know what? Fuck that. I'm in the middle. Mm-hmm. I could have opinions on both sides of the spectrum. We could have the discussions. We might disagree, but let's talk about it. Let's talk about why we disagree. Let's try to understand why we are the way that we are. Because if we never try to understand it, that's like trying to solve a problem.
Understanding goes hand in hand with learning. And if you're trying to understand and listen and have conversations, you're going to come out better. You might not change your mind, but hearing different perspectives and experiencing different things and looking at different points, should always be a positive thing.
Either you'll come out with better arguments for why you believe what you do, or you'll learn something new that you didn't know before.
I agree, but not having the conversation and just like, no, I'm just going to Netflix.
That's the problem.
It is a huge problem.
It's even a problem with men and women.
I agree. We wait till it's too late to have these conversations. We sort of like, what, it's not worth bringing up.
That's probably why the divorce rate's so high.
The divorce rate is high, but it's not high enough because there's another 30% of couples who hate each other and they don't get divorced.
Because
so you're really talking over whatever, they're lazy or the kids or whatever. So you're talking about 50% do get divorced, and there's another 30% that don't get divorced. So you're talking about 80% of marriages probably shouldn't be together. That's a huge percentage, and a lot of them could have been saved early if they learned how to communicate and they learned how to see each other's point of view and they learned how to say I'm sorry and they learned how to listen and all of these factors, and they just don't. I don't know.
I think this is a problem that is solvable, but it requires effort, not just from the individuals trying to solve the problem, but from the masses.
Yeah, effort. People are
lazy.
They're emotionally lazy. They just want to either put their blinders on or put their their earmuffs on and they just want to stay out of it. And then before you know it, 30 years have gone by and the life that you could have had or wanted like didn't happen. And then you're like, where did all the time go? Or how did I get in this position? Or why am I doing this for a living? Or how come I live here? Any of these things.
So having regrets.
I don't know. A lot of regrets. I don't really have too many regrets, if any. And I brought that up the other day, and somebody said to me, like, that's kind of sad. And they might have been right on that.
How old are you so people understand?
55.
55, no regrets.
No.
I like that.
But somebody said the other day, well, you should have regrets.
Why?
Because they made the argument, and I heard that I didn't care enough about certain decisions to feel emotionally like I should have done that, or I screwed that up, or I should have married her, or something like that. So I see that side too. I'm like, that kind of makes sense.
I see that side.
Yeah,
I don't agree with it.
They're like, if you live, regret is ties into longing, tied into something else like that. So yeah, that's a long time to live without. Because it's not that I don't regret or I made every decision right or whatever. It's like where I am now, I like where I think I can go moving forward. And I'm not sure any other fork in the road would have led me to this point. So I'm like, I don't want to look behind like door number 2. I'm like, you know what? This is good. I'll settle. I stand with this hand so far. Maybe that's a vague way of saying no regret, but some people are like, oh, but what if you did this? I get that.
I don't agree with having regrets because having regrets essentially insinuates that you made a wrong decision, that you don't trust your judgment enough, that you made the right decision, even if it might have burned you in the ass.
Or you say that I'm not in control of the outcome moving forward.
I'm not in control of my life.
And you're like, unless you think this is the end of the road, you still have opportunity to write this narrative any way you want. Even
if it went south. Let's say the decision you made was wrong, in the moment. Looking back on it, you could say, okay, I learned something. It's not a regret, though. Right. Because if I would have not made that decision, I wouldn't have gotten to where I am.
It's taking the information and taking the experiences and using them as positive and moving forward. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good way to look at things. But a lot of people are like, oh, my God, I should have gotten divorced 10 years ago. Or I should have married that guy. Or I should have taken that job. Or I should have moved to this place. You're going to have a lot less regret if you take action in some way. If you stay in one place for your whole life, or you stay in a bad relationship for too long, or you work at a place that you're not happy at, you're bound to increase your regret odds tremendously. Mm-hmm. If you're constantly shaking it up to try and find what works, I think you're less likely to have that regret because you are constantly surrounded by opportunities and possibilities that wouldn't have existed otherwise.
I hope no one has any regrets for listening to this podcast up to this point, which reminds me, I hope I have no regrets for telling you to go and give me a nice 5-star review at the end of this episode.
That's right.
And tell more people to come and listen, because at this podcast, we talk about
you won't regret that.
What you need to hear. Everything we've said up to this point, you need to hear this shit. Because no one else is saying it, and everyone else that is saying it is trying to make you pick sides. I'm not trying to make you pick any sides. I'm trying to have you come here, listen to the conversation, and form your own opinions. I'm not trying to teach you what to think. I'm trying to teach you how to think. And saying that, it was a pleasure having you on, Brian.
This is fun. I like this. I enjoy these conversations.
I do as well.
I don't get to have enough of them.
I do as well. And I'm very much looking forward to having you on in the future. Yeah. Maybe going on the Great Love Debate. By the way, tell them about the Great Love Debate really quick.
The Great Love Debate is both a live touring town hall style comedy show on love, dating, relationships. We have been to 123 cities and 13 countries around the world, and we sort of try and get to the crux of the dating disconnect in every city. And it's also the #1 dating relationship podcast in the world. Since 2015.
Go listen to the Great Love Debate.
Listen to the Great Love Debate and
stop wasting time.
Stop wasting time. I'm not sure all the answers are there, but a lot of the questions are raised. And as I always say, there's huge value in raising the questions.
And here's another question to raise. Go follow the Instagram. Go follow the TikTok. Go shout it out. Go share it to your friends. Go repost it on your story. Go spread the message, because I love you. And I hope God blesses every single one of you. Take care of yourself.